Welcome back to the channel. My name is Adam Smith, and inside this game overview and gameplay video, I am looking forward to showing you the solo mode for Umbrella, this one coming from Lumberjacks Studio. The aim of this video is to help you see this game set up for solo mode and played through to help you make an informed decision on it. We're going to start off with the setup instructions and then dive right into gameplay, and I'll show you how this one flows and operates. Let's learn quickly about what Umbrella is all about. A crowd of umbrellas fills the streets of New York. From above, the colors dance, perform the required figures, and score as many points as possible. In Umbrella, your aim is to complete figures using 4 umbrellas of the same color, following the indicated positions. To achieve this, though, you'll need to slide umbrellas from the different waiting zones onto your stage, optimizing their movements and choosing their colors wisely. To set up to play the Umbrella solo mode, you'll simply need to go through a handful of very easy steps, starting off with a personal board. You'll be placing one dead center in the middle of your table, and then setting up to the left and right a waiting zone for each side, as well as one above the personal board. 3 waiting zones sit around the dashboard, but there's also one built into the dashboard itself along the very bottom. Now we're going to focus our attention on the stage of the personal board right in the center. You'll see a number of umbrella tokens of various colors. You'll be going into your bag full of umbrella tokens. These are wooden tokens, and you're going to be finding the matching and corresponding umbrella color for each space. So at this point, you'll have 16 umbrella tokens in your stage area of your personal dashboard, and those tokens will match the corresponding slots in that area. And also, next, take 5 of each color, place them in a stack nearby. We're going to flip these over, randomly mix them together, and we're going to put 5 in each of the waiting areas around the game board in all 4 positions. The 20 umbrella tokens up here have been flipped face down, randomized, and now we'll go ahead and place, as I mentioned, 5 in each of the waiting areas. That'll do it for the umbrella tokens. Any extras go right back into the box. Now let's shift our focus to the figure tiles, which are right here in a stack, making sure that these are on their black side versus their white side. They are double-sided. And when you're setting up for solo play, you're going to go ahead and create 2 stacks of 3 and place those stacks in these 2 first positions. You'll also notice an asterisk, which is in a certain corner of that figure area. So when you're actually going ahead and taking a stack of 3 and placing it here, make sure that the actual asterisk lines up with the position of the asterisk on the watermarked area. With this step completed, the rest of the figure tiles can go back to the game box. The final step of setup for solo play is going to be the scoreboards. You'll see these in the bottom right-hand corner here. You're going to see ones which have a single filled-in square, some which will have 2 filled-in squares. And if you actually put these in categories, you'll have 4 of each of them. And then if you flip them over, they increase in difficulty to the 3rd level for this one. And flipping these ones over, they increase to the hardest difficulty in the game at 4. Now, I'll certainly touch more on the differences between the difficulty levels when we get to the end of the video after gameplay, but for now, we'll start off with the very first level of difficulty, this one right here, and it's actually recommended in the rulebook to start with this one for your very first play. Once you know which scoreboard you're using and which side of that scoreboard, you'll then place it into your personal dashboard, and the final thing to do is to grab 6 scoring markers and place them nearby. And that, my friends, is all the steps you need to complete to get the Umbrella solo mode set up and ready to play. The objective of the game is to accumulate as many points as possible during your play, and once you have that total, you'll go ahead and compare that against the achievement board to see how you stand. So if the aim of the game is to score as many points as possible, how do we primarily do this? Well, the major way is to complete figures. The second we're able to complete a figure, meaning that we have the exact same pattern, but we have to do it with all the same color, then we're able to go ahead and place a scoring marker when we complete it on one of the colors that match the colors we use to complete the figure. For example, if we completed this figure right here, having 4 blue umbrellas in that exact pattern on our stage down here, we place a scoring marker in any of the blue positions on our scoreboard. And the key thing to remember is once all of the blue ones are filled up, you're not going to gain any more points by using blue umbrellas. So which blue umbrella should you cover over with your score marker? Well, it depends on what grouping you're trying to complete in order to get additional points above that group. And it's important to know that when a color is no longer visible on the scoreboard track, I can no longer complete any figure of that color. Now, in addition to actually placing a scoring marker when you complete a figure in solo play, you're going to go ahead and take the corresponding figure you completed, and you'll be flipping it over to its white side and placing it in any available open space along the top row. And if there isn't an open space, you can place it on top of an existing pile. So as I mentioned, if we had completed this particular figure right here, I flip it over. This is the side that shows on the opposite end of it. It looked like this originally, and we go ahead and make sure that the asterisk is lined up with the space it's moving into. You'll see how this actually flows when we get into gameplay, so let's just talk quickly about all the different areas you can potentially gain points from. So first off, for every single scoring token you place on the scoreboard, you're going to get +2 points. You get additional points depending on the scoreboard used, because again, each scoreboard, based on the level of difficulty, will have different criteria to score points. This one is simply by grouping, so as long as we cover up the blue and yellow over here, we gain 3 additional points. If we only get part way to completing one, like we have red and yellow covered, we don't get the 5 points, for instance. If the last scoring token has been placed, the player also gets to score an additional point for each remaining umbrella token in the waiting zones, including their personal waiting zone, which is found at the very bottom of the personal board. So getting all 6 of the scoring black marker tokens onto the scoreboard is a good thing, because anything sitting in your waiting areas for umbrellas is going to count for points. Umbrella's solo mode ends in 2 different ways. The first is when the last scoring token has been placed, or when it's impossible to create a new figure with the remaining umbrella tokens available. If either of the end of game triggers are hit, we then simply add up all of our points and take a look across the achievement board to determine how well we did at a given difficulty level. Without further ado, let's dive into solo gameplay, and I'll show you how this thing flows and operates. We start off with the very first step of the turn sequence, which is to choose an umbrella token from one of the 4 waiting zones, and we get to slide it in to the side we took it from. So for instance, if we take an umbrella from this side over here, we can choose to place the umbrella we took, let's say the green one, into this position, this one, or this one. If we take an umbrella from down here, it can be one of the 4 bottom ones. If it comes from over here, one of the 4 right ones, and if it comes from up top, one of the 4 top ones. Again, the key thing you'll be focusing on is the figures you're trying to complete. So you're taking a look at these figure patterns and you're trying to figure out how can you get the exact same colors to be in this orientation. So right off the hop, the very first figure is a little tricky because we have a yellow, a red, a green, and a blue, which is one of every single color in the position for this one. So it might take some work to get there. Whereas this one over here has a red, green, green, and then a yellow. So we actually have the availability to potentially push for green on this one, because we've got 2 of the positions already covered and be able to maybe pull this off. It's not as easy as just placing a new umbrella into the outer edges of this staging area, but whichever edge you choose to bring the umbrella into, so if we picked one from here and placed it into one of these 4 slots, the corresponding row that we placed the new one in, if we took this yellow one and placed it down here, for instance, would shove everything over, pushing the blue one out, and anything that comes out on the opposite side is completely discarded. So I'm going to start things off by placing this blue umbrella into one of these 4 positions. I'm going to choose to place into this one right here, which is going to push everything up and push this blue one out. We'll shift everything down like that. And as you can see, we're working towards getting those 3, or I should say 4 green in the pattern that matches the figure up there. And as you can see, there's strategy there in terms of which ones you put in, at what times, and what they'll push out, because we can't just easily go ahead and place a green one from here into this position without knocking one of the ones in the position we need out. That's not good. After placing a single umbrella into my staging area and discarding the one that came out the other side, we now check any of the figures to see if we have a match. If we do, we go through the scoring process. If we don't, we just go into our next turn, which is grabbing another umbrella and placing it into the staging area to try to work towards a figure. Let's use this umbrella right here. We're going to push it into this slot, and that's going to push this green one out of the equation. We're obviously trying to complete a figure with as little amount of umbrella usage as possible, but sometimes you might have to spend 2 or 3 in order to get something to a completion state. So we need one more move along this in order to make it happen. We can also start to keep in mind where positionally the other figure will be. We can see here we're kind of leaning more towards red, so it would make a lot of sense to put this red one in here as we're working towards this while primarily looking at this one. So let's go ahead and push this one through, which will knock this red out. Unfortunately, that actually takes away from what we're doing, but it does kind of help on the opposite end over here. But it really helps out from the fact that when we just did this, we now get to complete a figure. We completed a figure with the green umbrellas, so we get to place a scoring marker on any of the green umbrellas across the scoring track. I could try to work towards the 5+, or I could go for the 3+. I'm going to go for the 5 and see if we can make that happen. Now, because we completed a black figure token, we're going to flip that token over and place it into an empty slot nearby, and we're going to make sure that the orientation matches in terms of the asterisks. The one thing to note is we ever complete a white one, a white figure token, instead of flipping it, it just gets removed from the game. Some options have certainly opened up here. We now have 3 different figures we could potentially work towards. The one I'm eyeing, though, is going to be this one right here because we do have a red, a green, a yellow, and a red. We could work towards this one, I think, quite easily based on how it is spread. So I'm going to go ahead and place this red one right here into this position, pushing this one out. And then on the opposite side, we're going to grab this red one right here, and we're going to place it into this position, pushing this one out. And that's going to complete another figure. Now, as I've already started a grouping of 5, it might not be wise to kind of put this scoring marker in the red position for the 5 because it might be a lot to work towards it, although we could do it because we have 6 markers. We could go after both the 5s if we think we can actually pull that off. But I think what I'll do just to be safe, because I'd rather make sure I can try to complete this for additional points, I'll put it on the +3 instead. I've got 4 figures across the top of the personal dashboard to work towards. Let's see which one is closest. We're going to have to do some movement here for sure to get some patterns to open up. We might be able to make something happen with the 3 green umbrellas here into a cube formation. We got to get them over to the right. I'm also looking at this one right here, which could have 2 blue and potentially 2 blue here, and that's definitely doable. Maybe I will aim for that far right figure. I think that's exactly what I'll do. I'll go ahead and place this blue one here into this row right here, knocking out the red, which is not as much of a concern. I don't really feel like building off the red as much anymore. And this is going to work out to get the 2 that we need in this position. We have 1 blue here. We need another one here. So let's go ahead and bring this one up. And that's going to push this one out of position like so. Another scoring marker, which is going to give us another 2 points, and I'm putting it into the grouping here for the +5. We need to work on some yellow to complete that grouping and get the additional 5 points at the very end. And we completed a white figure, so it is discarded from the game. Now, what's pretty brutal is that we have 3 blue in this area right here. We just need 1 more blue in order to pull off that right there, but we don't have a blue on this side, which would have been perfect to push things over and make it happen. This figure right here looks like a really good one, especially with all the blue that we have down in this area. I'm going to go ahead and take a green here, and we're going to push from this side of the equation, knocking this one out. And as I'm trying to complete not only this figure is my main focus, but I'm also trying to make sure we can go after some yellow in the future. I want to get some more yellow into here, so let's go ahead and do 2 things at once. We'll get this yellow one into the equation, pushing this red one out, and also completing another one. And just to give myself some more options in terms of scoring, I've gone ahead and placed this blue one here rather than this one, because I could either use my last 2 scoring markers to go after these 2, or I could just complete the 5 over here, or even go after the green here. The completed figure, which was on its black side, flips over to its white side, goes into an empty space, again, based on the orientation. In this case, it's going to be that top right-hand corner. One thing to note, when you flip something over, if you look at a pattern and you actually happen to have it, which I currently don't, but if that ever occurs, you can't cash it in immediately. You still have to go ahead and place 1 umbrella into the actual stage area, and then at that point, you can score that one that popped up. So strategically, if you flip over one of these tiles and you find that you have the exact pattern, then all you have to do is place an umbrella in that doesn't mess with the pattern so you can cash it in. Now again, strategy-wise, you're trying not to spend as many umbrellas from the waiting areas as possible, because remember, if you get all 6 scoring markers down here on the scoreboard, then for every other one that you have sitting out here in terms of umbrellas in the waiting areas, you get an additional point for each one. So if you're burning lots of these umbrellas from the waiting areas to get your 6 scoring markers out there, you're not going to score as many points overall. Now, the tough thing to decide against is the fact that in some cases like this, I could just place 1 blue token in here, or any of these 3 tokens really, into this one right here, pushing this blue over, and that would actually satisfy this right here. But blue does not complete any groups, and I'm really trying to get a group completed. So instead, I'll go with 2 spends of an umbrella. We'll go ahead and place this one first into this position, knocking this one out. And then we'll go ahead and spend this one into this position, knocking this one out. And we've completed this black pattern right here, which is these 2 greens and these 2 greens. We're going to go ahead and take it, flip it over. There's only 1 empty space, which is the one it's currently in, so it'll be placed like so. Now, as you can see, the yellow has been quite elusive, and it's probably more so from the fact that I haven't been focusing on bringing yellows into the equation enough to be able to pull off a pattern, but also because the ones that are currently inside my stage area are not exactly lining up very well with the different figures I can go after, making things tricky to get these extra 5 points off the group. Now, taking a look at where things currently are situated in terms of where I could actually spend a yellow umbrella and bring it in from in order to try to get to one of the figures, this one right here is tempting. I have one yellow up here. I could get this yellow into this position. These two could come down, but once you actually count up how many umbrellas are coming in versus how many I would get for the group points, you actually realize that it's not worth it. It would end up costing me one yellow umbrella over here just to put it into this position, and then I'd have to get these two umbrellas into these two and then have them pushed further down. That would be a total of 5 umbrellas used just to get 5 points off the grouping. It's not going to make sense. And if I take a look at any of these other patterns, I am nowhere near able to do them without spending a large amount of points to the point of the grouping value not being worth the effort. So it might make more sense to hold on to the umbrellas I have in my waiting areas and use 1 or 2 to try to get to that last scoring marker being placed for any color I can possibly pull off. Now, many of you likely noticed there's one figure of the 4 which is very close to being completed, and that's the one right here, which has 3 green umbrellas, and we have the ability to potentially move this one into this slot and complete, but you cannot. As it states in the game rules, once a scoreboard no longer shows that umbrella color, as you can see, we've covered up all the greens. There's no more greens here. We no longer are going to get a scoring marker for that particular figure. In other words, we can't complete it for the green color. So right back to the drawing board, we can still complete that exact pattern in a different color combination. We can still use blue, yellow, or red. We just cannot use green in any of the figures at this point. I'm going to focus on the figure in the top right-hand corner. Only 2 umbrellas needed to complete that figure, and we can do it for blue. We already have 2 of the blues in the right situation right here. We need a blue here, and we need another blue to be moved here. We can do this by simply just adding 2 umbrellas to these rows to push them over. So we'll go ahead and do this, putting this umbrella here, knocking this one out, moving things over, and then we'll go ahead and do the same thing down here, pushing this one and this one out, and just like that, we've completed that figure. The scoring marker goes in the last blue position, which is not going to net us any grouping points on that side of the equation. At this point, this is discarded, but it's not going to matter anyway because we just hit an end game trigger. Remember, there are 2 ways that the game can trigger its end, and that is if the last scoring token's been placed, which it has, or when it's impossible to create a new figure with the remaining umbrella tokens available. So to total up our points, we take a look at our scoring markers. If they're placed, we get 2 for each one of them. There are 6, so that's a total of 12 points right there. Do we have any groupings completed? We do. For this particular level of difficulty, groupings are how we score points. We get 3, so it's going to be 15, and then we count up any available umbrellas all the way around because we placed all 6 scoring markers. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points from the waiting areas. So 12 from the scoring markers, 3 from the grouping total, which is 15, and then we have a total of 7 available outside of that from the waiting area. That's a total of 22 points, which puts us between 19 and 23 points at a not bad. I was playing on the very first level of difficulty, and as you can see, didn't even make it to the top section of this achievement board, made it to the top of the bottom section of the achievement board, just on the cusp. I needed 2 more points really to get me over that hump. I really needed to get that grouping on the right-hand side for +5, or maybe work on that one over there. Again, the timing of when you complete the color and also strategizing in advance, and you can actually strategize multiple turns in advance, and I definitely recommend that for this one. Don't just think 1 turn in advance or 2 turns in advance, think down the line, because a lot of chain and ripple effects occur from just one umbrella entering from one of the sides. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I do want to go over the other scoreboards so you get an idea as the difficulty level increase as you go through this, because if you're picking this game up for solo play, you might want to see what kind of challenges await you across the different difficulty levels. So for level 1, as you saw, typically grouping is how things are being broken up in terms of points, and things change in terms of the grouping. So whichever one you choose is going to be a different outlay of the different color combinations. And of course, if you get past that first level, which of course there are 4 different variations of it, you flip these over if you want, and you start looking at level 3. Now, we'll talk about this in a second because there's actually a few things going on with level 3, but I want to talk about level 2 next because this would technically be the next one you go to. This one here, you'll see a difference in terms of multiple colors being in a single slot. So in other words, you start getting a little bit more flexibility, but you don't have as many groupings. So in level number 1, you can see there was 4 groupings to attain points. Now you've only got 3, but there's the odd one in here that is split in half where you can choose which color you complete. Now things get real wild when you start hitting level 3 and 4 in terms of the requirements. You'll notice there's no more grouping going on. There's no more groups that give you predefined amounts of points. But what happens in this situation is you have a number of different options. And how it works is, as you can see up top here, it says when you have two scoring markers together, you're going to gain a certain number of points. So when you have two scoring markers side by side, so if you pick to complete a red here and a green, that's going to give you a total of 3 points. If you complete another one that's adjacent to the two, you're going to get up to 5 points. If you complete another that's adjacent, it's 8 points. Now you might be wondering what these white areas are. They actually correlate to the figures. It's literally telling you have to complete a figure of exactly that orientation to be able to place a scoring marker on it. So for instance, you could break things up and be scoring only 3 points for every two that are beside each other because there's spaces in between, or you could be working to try to complete them in a larger group to gain as much points as possible. But it is worth mentioning there is a maximum of 4 adjacent to each other for a total of 8 points. Anything beyond that does not increase the value of the score, hence the values shown at the top. Next up is level 4 scoreboards, and these introduce powers, and these powers are triggered when you complete both sides of the colored spots around a given power. So for instance, if we completed this one right here as a yellow and a red, there's a power rotating arrow in the center which would trigger. This is going to allow the player to immediately play a new turn. Now that's how that power works when you're playing multiplayer, but this is the only adjustment in terms of solo mode. On the level 4 scoreboard, when the play again power is triggered, it allows you instead to not discard the outgoing umbrella token. So in other words, the outgoing umbrella token that gets pushed out of the equation instead goes to the waiting area on the side it was pushed out towards. If you get markers on either side of this power with 2 arrows going left and right, this power allows the players to immediately exchange the positions of 2 orthogonally adjacent umbrella tokens on their personal board. This final power, which shows in the rulebook as a curved back and forth arrow, whereas in this one it's showing it as 2 arrows going in opposite directions. This one allows the player to immediately exchange an umbrella token from a waiting zone with an umbrella token on their personal board. And that, my friends, is going to wrap up the game overview and gameplay video for Umbrella from Lumberjacks Studio. Really hope you enjoyed this one, showing you how to set the game up, how to play it in its solo mode. Thank you guys so much for watching, and let me know in the comments down below what you thought. And as always, keep on rolling solo.